If you're someone who doesn't have a lot of time and you want to start age-adding to get good at Japanese, then you're definitely going to want to try passive listening instead of active immersion, especially at the start. Basically what I'm saying is you're going to make passive listening the core part of your immersion at the start, because I know a lot of you just don't have the time to sit down and kind of lock into an anime, especially at the start when it's pretty boring and you don't understand that much, but you need to get that foundation down somehow. So that's exactly what I'm going to be talking about today. Real quick, if you like my content and you want to support this channel, please consider checking out my Patreon. We have a private Discord community that you can join and talk to other age-adders in. So passive listening, like I said, this is going to basically be the core of your immersion if you don't have a ton of time. So for example, when I started, I would force myself to do about 1 or 2 hours a day of just, locked into the anime, right, for the first 3 months. It always felt like that I would just pick up some things, but it was just kind of too hard to just stay locked in, and it didn't feel like it was going to work for me. But luckily, I did know about passive listening while I was going into this, and I was already doing it. So what really helped me on the days that I just could not sit down and lock in was just having that audio running all the time, that condensed audio with the podcast. And because I was learning words on Anki, I would hear them in the podcast, and that would really kind of boost your listening skills, especially at the start. Now, I'm sure you've already heard of the concept of passive listening, but to really sell you on it, I'm just going to give you a few main points of why it's actually so good. So number one, like I said, you get used to how Japanese sounds, right? Which is going to be super important for actually, listening to the language later on in your age-at career. Because you don't want to be one of those people who can only speak or something, or only say a couple phrases, but then you actually go to Japan and you can't understand anything, right? And it's like, what's the point of learning the language if you can't even understand what's being said to you? Personally, I always believe that being able to understand, listen and read is more important than outputting, albeit, outputting is a really nice part of the language. However, the input aspect, it's equally as important or even a little more important. Number two, a lot of your content is just going to be boring at the start because you can't understand. Even if you've got a lot of discipline and you force yourself to sit down, right? It's still going to be kind of boring just because you can't understand a ton, and you can pick out the words, you know what some of the kanji mean, but you lose a lot of the nuance. So specifically what I mean by that is, for example, Refold has on their roadmap, a little levels of comprehension list, and level 1 is just kind of like the language is kind of gibberish, but it started to look a little bit familiar. Level 2 is you can recognize, 1 or 2 words in most sentences. So when you're around that stage, right, it's going to be really hard to just kind of lock in. And because of that, if you just have this audio on all the time and you're able to just pick things up as you go through your day, it's going to be a lot better than just forcing yourself to watch a show that you hate, or something that's just not interesting, or it feels like you're making no progress and then you just end up quitting. The last point I'm going to mention just for this is that you can, like I said, you can passive listen anytime during the day, at the gym, cooking food, working, basically any task that allows you to have something in your ears. However, the best type of content for passive listening, in my opinion, is Japanese podcasts on Spotify, because it's condensed audio. So basically the speaker is always talking and then they don't really pause ever, right? So what I originally did is I took literally 100 episodes of the Yuyu Nihongo podcast on Spotify, and then I just put them in a giant playlist and I downloaded all of them so I could have them for offline use. But nowadays I just have a bunch of audios of different YouTube live streams from Japanese YouTubers, and I have a giant file that I just keep playing 24/7. Now, about passive listening, the most important part of this is actually just building the habit of choosing to listen to a Japanese video or podcast instead of, English music, even Japanese music. And also, just because the audio is on doesn't actually mean that you're learning, right? You actually have to try and hear the different sounds, try and listen to the word you heard earlier. Just because you have the audio on, I'm sorry to kind of break your hopes and dreams here, but just because you have the audio on doesn't mean that you're actually going to learn, right? It's not enough to just have it on. You actually have to be paying attention to it. Because it's called passive listening, don't get the idea that you can just have it on and eventually you'll get fluent. It's called passive listening because it's on 24/7. The idea is when you have these kind of gaps in your time or something, and your focus drifts away, it might drift back onto the audio, and then you end up listening for 30 seconds and you're able to pick out a couple words. That's really what it's all about. So with that being said, if you can notice some words that are being spoken, you'll make a ton of progress for when you actually go to start sitting down and actively immersing. So the verdict, if you're someone who doesn't have a ton of time to do Japanese and you just want to kind of get this foundation down, right? Doing passive listening exclusively at the start with your Anki deck it actually might benefit your situation a ton. I actually got this video idea from hopping on a call today with one of my viewers, and he was explaining that he's going full-time in this company and he only has time to do Anki for 30 minutes a day, so he reps a couple new words, and that he doesn't do anything. He doesn't immerse, doesn't try to but I recommended passive listening to him, so I decided to make this video because I thought a lot of you guys might be in a specific kind of scenario. So I hope this video helps y'all out a bit with, just Japanese and AJAT. So with all that said, それじゃあまたね。